So this is the bowl I started last time. Just to let you know the conditions in the studio, I left it out. And then yesterday I felt it was still really wet. So the progress wasn't. So I got it off the bat and I put it upside down on a big bat and let it dry upside down in the drying cabinet for about an hour, 2 hours, something like that. And then the rim got really dry, but the bottom was still too wet. So then what I did is I left this. I got a bigger bat. You see how it doesn't fit on the regular size bat? I got a bigger bat and put this back on my shelf. The rim was dry enough already. And then I got this just really long piece of plastic. And then overnight, I left it like this, wrapped up like that. You see that? So the bottom was exposed because the rim was dry enough. And then this was almost not really wedgeable, but really wet still. Like I could still, if I drag my fingers across like that, I would have left like 4 furrows, right? I could easily just push into the clay and leave a mark behind. So I let it dry overnight like this, and now it's perfectly ready to trim. If you want to feel it, you can. So I'm going to deal with the inside first. I'm going to trim out this bump here. There's a little swale here, and then I'm going to clean this up. For me, right, a little bowl with a little imperfections, okay. The stakes for me are much higher with this, right? I'm much more committed to this. I'm going to spend a lot of time glazing it. It's a lot more material, so I'm going to spend more time. There's more incentive for me to spend more time working on this. That makes sense? Now, some of you won't have bowls this big, right? Or some of you won't have bowls this open, right? This is all getting, if I laid it down further, just a little bit more, I was verging on getting more like a plate-ish shape. So this is very conducive to trimming the inside, right? But if your bowl comes up and does more of a straight action, you got to focus maybe more on getting the inside correct. That makes sense, everybody? Because it's harder to get in there with a tool if they're more vertical sides, right, to it, because the tool just can't get in there. You'll also notice that I'm going to trim the inside. It's easier since it's so wide open for me to sweep out that material. Okay, so we're going to take this away, put that off for a minute. So I'm going to use a foam bat. We used one of these last time. Right now, this stuff is going to go all over the place, partially because... Let me get this. The trimmings are going to end up going all over the floor. For me, the floor, anything that ends up in the floor, do not put in the recycling bucket because there's other stuff on the floor, like just junk people tracking outside, rocks, whatever. Some of those things do not cooperate well in the kiln with your clay, right? So if we wedge it up and we send it through the clay mixer, if a rock can mess up the clay mixer, and then if there's a rock in your clay, it can mess it up. That makes sense. So if I'm gonna gather up all the material off the floor and throw that away. That makes sense. So if you see lots of material, clay-like material in the recycling bucket, don't worry, just accept that person did it. All right, so here we're gonna, hopefully this is on. All right, so it's spinning. So since this is the biggest part right here, I want to trim this. I want to center this. This is where I'm gonna start, right? So you see it's going womp, 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 womp. So I'm going to push this way a little bit. So I'm just gonna do this one manual rather than hitting it, right? Because it's on a piece of foam right there. Right now, sometimes your bowl is doing 2 different things, right? Sometimes this part is doing one thing, this rim is doing something else, right? Because they're going around. I would center to this part first to make this look good. And then if this rim is doing something else, I would recenter to that and fix this. It's almost there. Remember, this bowl was kind of warped when it came off the wheel as well, right? So okay, there we go. So I'm good. So there. It's pretty good. So now I'm just going to start going after this right here. This section right here is too high right there. So I got to trim some material off of there. So let's bring this camera down so you guys have a good view of that just on screen, and then we'll switch views. There we go. So I'm going to spend a lot of time because this is bending this way, right? Like that. This tool is flat. I'm going to try to whip it around and use this chubby end right here. Do you guys see that? Because if I use this part here like that, sure, it will trim right away, but pretty soon this part and this part will dig too deep down because this is a curve right there like that. You see that, how the curve hits there and there first. So I'm going to use the heel of this to trim this out. And I'm being pretty aggressive, right? Because I know I got a lot of material to trim out. So then this stuff goes away. I'll put it there. That can be recycled because it never hit the floor. And then I feel it again just to make sure, and I'll go again. Just a little bit more. I'm being much less aggressive here now. There we go, like that. All right, so I feel like I got it, so I'm going to sweep all this away, right? And so this is the problem, right? If it's trapped in there, you have to manually, where on the outside trimming, it just falls away, right? So there's another issue. You got to clear out all that stuff as you go. Is there a rule against trimming the inside? No, you can trim the inside of anything you want, right? It's all about product, getting the thing that you want or the thing that looks good or anything like that, whatever you got to do. So I'm not going to stop you from trimming the inside. Why am I allowing myself to trim the inside of this? It's just that, one, it's so big, right? And it got so weak that if I kept fooling around with it, it probably would have collapsed, right? So I had to stop. So if it comes down to sacrificing it, right, or leaving the bump there, those are your two choices, and leave the bump there and come back and trim it off. But as you get better, this will become less of a problem. So now this I can just tell, I can feel that this is feeling pretty good, but I got a little bit of a bump right here. I got almost no bump right here. That's because this bowl probably needs to be shoved a little bit this way. Let me see. Let's just trim it out. So I'm going to trim a little bit higher here. Let's just see what happens as I trim down. I'm being really light here in my trimming there, removing that material. There we go. I'm just going to let that stuff fall on the floor. It's getting there. So this is a little bit, so there's a little bit of a rise right here, like a little back up. Let's see here, a little bit more here, a little bit here, a little bit here. So there's a little bit all the way around, so I'm going to trim. I'm going to be more aggressive here. Oh. Because this is so flat, I'm using more of this part now rather than, because this is going much more flat, I'm using this part here to get a little bit more. There we go. So I'm almost there. Golly. So it feels like I'm going to have to trim all the way up into here. So I'm just going to go for it. Now, this is a problem trimming that high up because of my aggressive drawing. You could see that one side dried out more than the other, right? So what does that mean, right? It just happens. But for trimming, that means when I get to the drier side, it's going to be harder. It won't trim as fast. Right, so I have to kind of note that in my brain that one side isn't going to get trimmed as aggressively. It's almost there. There's a little bit of a bump right there, so I'm just going to, it's almost there. It's probably, you guys probably can't see it, but I can feel it. Okay, I'm going to sweep all that away. All right, so it's basically there. So now I have to come back and deal. There's this one little dip right here. You see, that was originally there. So I'm going to try to come in. Oh, all right. So that's not going to work anymore because that clay is too hard. I brought out a metal rib. You guys see it?
What?
There it is. Metal rib. Got it. So now I'm going to use this metal rib. This will do two things at once, meaning I'm going to use it, first of all, to scrape out all this excess clay. Right, like that. You see that, how I'm collecting it all and just sweeping it off the side, right? That just allows me to do that. And then I'm going to start then using this now like a trimming tool. I'll do it over here so you guys can see. See how that is clay that's getting scraped off. You can see where it's getting scraped off because it leaves a lighter line, darker line, right? You see that? That's where the lighter lines are, where it's getting scraped off. All right, so I'm using that tool. Sweep it aside. I'm really focusing on this top part here and going down. I know I'm close, right? And you see I'm trying to dump most of it over here because this is the part I can recycle. right? Now, let's say I was going to do a lot of these, like I had a bunch of stuff that was just going to get all over the place. I would, at my home studio, clean up the floor really, clean up the floor really good, make sure there's no foreign material, and then I would just trim all over the place and then collect all that stuff up. Here, it's just too dirty a place for you to do that, right? There's too much stuff around, right? So here I'm just trimming this away, getting it to look good. I'm gonna now, so this is looking pretty close. There's still a little bit of a dip right there, so I need to do it a little bit longer. Let's be a little bit more aggressive. It's gone there, that line is gone, so I'm moving down. So you can see it's getting there, right? And you can see a very consistent there. So now I'm gonna focus on this area. So this here, well, you can actually see it fits, but it fits a little bit too well. So if I flex it, I think I can get it in there. So here we go. So there, and I'm not trying to use this to scrape it out anymore. I'm trying to first, what's going on there? There's a little bit of a bump there. I'll show you how to fix that here in a second. I think I might have knocked it off center a little bit because it's definitely more off center than it was before. Right, you see that? So I'm gonna try to bring it back a little. Does that even get close? Right there. All right. Oh, all right. We got to get this more in center. Man, it's rough. All right. We're just going to, okay. So here I'm going to, now this is pretty smooth up in here and I need to work this area. So it's that bump kind of came back a little bit. So I'm going to spend some time with this part of the rib, like trimming more. Right. Just being super aggressive once again, right there to work that transition a little bit. Just scrape off some clay. It's getting there. Just work this transition area. Let's scrape off the clay again. It's almost there. It's almost there. So you see how I can't see it with my eyes, but I can see it when I'm feeling, right? So so what am I doing here is I'm feeling the tool, how it's moving as I go across. Because sometimes as I'm moving the tool up, I could feel the bump around. I could feel the tool tip back and forth, right? So I've done it enough so I can kind of feel if it's uneven with the tool. But really, I come in here and feel with my hand, right? Think about this, right? When people put on camouflage, right? Like, and they paint their face and they're wearing clothes. What they're doing is breaking up their outline, their silhouette, right? We see edges better than we see like this interior volume, right? So you've seen those things where you can't tell if it's a volume, if it's a hill coming towards you or a thing going back, right? Because your eyes can play tricks on you for this sort of just space. But when you touch it, you can really feel it, right? So that's the best way for me to tell always is by touching it. I'm coming back in here and just refixing up some other spots. Because I'm making this for you, I want to make sure it's really good, right? Because I'm talking you guys through it. So I want to make sure that you guys see that it's not instantaneous too, right? That it's not something that magically happens, right? If I were a better thrower, I would definitely, let's say if I were going to make a series of these, right? Like 10 of them or something, I would have just thrown this first one away, especially if I needed them to look all the same. Why? Because doing this sort of work, it'd be very difficult for me to replicate this again. There's a lot of extra steps, right, I'm putting in, right? So I'd want to get it right the first time. That makes sense? And because I know I can do it, right, it's almost there. All right, so it's feeling pretty smooth. So first of all, I'm going to get into, now I'm going to kind of work this center area a little bit just to make sure it's just as smooth. Because now I'm going to make this really smooth, like beautifully smooth, because right now I'm using the clay that has a bunch of, this is reclaim, so it has a bunch of other material in it, so it's really scratching up the surface. So we need, so I need to wet this down. Now if this were a little bit wetter, I could just lay this flat like that. It would compact the surface, but it's probably, well, it's kind of doing it, but since this clay is just a little bit dry, ooh, it's really doing it there. Since it's a little bit dry, we're gonna add a little bit of water at a time, like that. Add a little bit of water at a time, because that will soften up the surface. And then so I lay this guy down, right? I really want to smooth and compact that surface down. Right, and this takes a little bit of force, right? And then there's a little bit of gummy stuff that comes off, but you can see here that inner surface just looks gorgeous, like it's thrown. And then as it comes up to the rim, it's drier and drier, so it'll be harder for me to do. So I'm laying down an extra batch of water there, and then I can lay it down like that, just keep going around. It's almost there. See that? Because we want this to be smooth. Now, some glazes, you won't see that little scratchy pity marks. But for me, I don't know exactly which glaze I'm going to use. So I want to get rid of these. Now, I'm going to do this other little trick because I want to speed up the process. So I'll just wet it down again. That makes sense to everybody what I just did there. If your clay is smoother, like porcelain, you can get away with doing this very quickly. Porcelain smooths out very fast because it doesn't have these big parts. Ooh, I really put in too much water there. Okay, so I think we're good. Yep, so you see how it doesn't look like anything happened now. That's my goal. Then the rim, right, we want to do this now. I'm going to try to do a little bit with the rim, just compact it down a little bit because sometimes it doesn't look great. It's slowly getting there. And you want to do this because this is what? This is going to take up a lot of space in the kiln, right? You want to take care with all these steps because this is, right, 10 pounds of clay. That could have been 10 cups, right? So don't worry about how long it takes to get it done. All right. So now what we're going to do is flip this over. I got to remove the splash pan because it is too big. All right, to fit in a regular bat. So I have to find a bat that's bigger. I'm gonna flip it over. So I could have just picked it up, put it on there. But this is best practice is to put it on a bat and flip it over from now on, right? I know it's not centered, but we'll work on that in a second. So there's the bottom, right? And then I guess gotta remember, how thick it was. I could have measured, but I just got to remember and find the holes, right, for where it goes. Jeez. See right there. It's right there somewhere. Oh, I felt it. There we go. There. So now I have to think about, I have to center it up. Oh, I guess let's pick it up because we can talk about this, right? So just like I just did one, I said I wouldn't do, but let's talk about this, right? This is where, somewhere in here is where it starts going flat. So I'll put my foot like opposite that area. So I'm going to put my fingers on both sides and mark it, right? That's just my guess, just like plates, right? So now I'll center it. I'll do the tap centering thing. Ooh, this one's chunky. So I have to really hit this to get it to move. That's it. So there, tap center. So learn how to tap center, right? It's up there, tap center challenge. Get a free cup from John Hasegawa. And you can get cookies for just finding a Hello Kitty sticker, right? That's awesome. As I bet you
doing the rest of the class.
Just following Claudia around.
Yeah.
Or if she already put it out. All right, so this is a little bit wet. I wish we had a little bit harder clay. Let's see if I can find it. Ooh. All right, we're just going with that clay. This clay worries me a little bit because it's so soft. It might slide off. That's okay. We'll make it work.
Other stuff right here.
Yeah, that's perfect. Can you bring that bag out? Okay, here we go. Oh, no, that's all too hard. Well, maybe this one. Oh, I think this will work. My goodness. It's just even hard to roll out in the coils. So because this is so big, right, I gotta be careful, right? I wanna make sure these guys are off the edge and I push down against the wheel, right? I'm not pushing down up here against my rib, right? Down, down, down. And then down, down, down. And this is gonna make a mess because there's a lot of clay here for me to remove, right? This isn't a fast process, right? It's gonna take some time. So here, this is where the outside of my foot is-ish. I'll put a mark there. I'll put a mark there. And I'm see how chubby I'm gonna make the foot? That I'm gonna make it really wide, right? Because it's a big bowl, so it proportionately, I think everything needs to increase in size. You want a big foot like that, and then I'm just gonna start hammering away. So this is just, now it's just a little bit drier than what I want, but it's still trimming okay. See how it's coming off in those long strings? I got a lot of clay here to remove. Let's just, I don't know. Think about how beautiful the cherry blossoms look this year. What else is going on? I don't know. It's January? Oh, yes, for the people for the people on the recording, it's January. Ceramic Showcase is coming up. It's a big show at the convention center, not this weekend, but next weekend, next Friday and Saturday and Sunday. I will be there every day in the demo area recording the demos. So if you want to come by and say hi, lots of good pottery there. Lots of good, literally 100 different potters selling their work, including some of our people. You'll recognize a few people there from this group. Anne, are you there? Yeah, Anne will be there. And yep, all the guilds, correct. Yep. Yeah, wood, the wood people, the weaving people, jewelry making. It's a big fun thing. But kind of ceramics is kind of takes over like half the space.
And it's free.
And it's free. Other than you gotta get your butt down there and pay for parking. All right, so here I'm gonna start doing the outside of the foot. And just like before, you can't go super fast, right? I am going as fast as I dare, right? Because I know that it's a, also, I'm feeling that this side of clay, you can see it every time it goes around, is a little bit drier. So this is actually a little drier too. So I'm facing a little bit of resistance, right? That clay doesn't trim off quite as easily, right? So it is pushing me up a little bit there. So I'll actually see if I can get that even. And that's for my bad for letting it dry unevenly. All right. So you can see how much of a chunker foot I have, right? So everything for me just gets increased. It's like you took a regular size bowl, right? You know, shrink ray, it makes everything the same size but smaller. It makes everything, this one is in larger ray. It takes everything, right? Ant-Man goes from small, his hands proportionally are still the same size, his head, right? He is an Ant-Man, body gets shrunk, still same size head. Same thing here, right? That everything gets bigger. Foot gets taller, foot gets wider, right? Thickness overall is thicker, right? So for me, that's what I like to do. So I trim that, and now I'm gonna roll off the edge and start trimming the side here to make it match. And I could go back to this. Let's go back to this for just even a few minutes, right? Because that's an exposed side. And if you guys haven't been using the Sureform tool, use it because it's awesome. It started flattening out there. All right, we got to stop because it's getting too flat, and I got to go back to this. And I'm just going to dig, dig, dig. See that? How now I'm almost there for this. There we go. So now what I'm thinking about is how this is curving in, right? Let's lower that down. Right, I want to create a nice, beautiful form here, right? So, right, we were concentrating on the form on the inside the whole time, and now when I'm trimming, ideally, I'm trying to match that form from inside to outside, just like before. So there's a little bit of a swale here, so I'll spend some time trimming that away, right? You see that? And then come up across like that. There we go. So now that's good enough for here, right? And then I'm going to come back in and start trimming out the inside foot. So just like before, I'm going to trim the inside foot down to this level here, right? So this needs to drop down to that level here. I'm going to flip this tool around, go start from the inside out. I can be a little bit more aggressive here because this is still a little bit wetter clay. I'm being a little bit more aggressive than I would normally on how much I was just digging in there, right? Because I'm trying to go fast. And what I'm hoping is that the weight of the bowl helps hold it in place, right? There's more weight here, so it doesn't want to fly around. I got to go down a lot more still. So pull that off, and then it will just go down at least a couple more times. Look, there's something. Oh, no, that wasn't there. Right, I thought that was a hunk of something that got left behind. All right, so my goal is for this, right? I want to be able to glaze the inside. So what does that mean? I got to have it so I don't really have a straight edge, but so that there's enough clearance that I can put glaze in there without the inside touching the shelf. So I got to trim this inside out high enough, right? For me, once again, I would just scrap it and recycle it if I failed or this wasn't clearing, right? I don't want to kid around with this, right? Because it's a lot of clay, it's a lot of bolts, a lot of kiln space, right? If I can't make it look right, I'm not going to put the effort into finishing it, right? So you see I took all that effort for the inside and I'm taking all this effort on the outside to make sure it looks good. Because for me to glaze this is a commitment there too, right? It takes time. Does someone have one of those? Oh, yeah, thank you. So there, plenty of clearance, right? You see that? Now, it's actually almost there. You guys see that? This is almost there. Now, let's talk about how we can cheat this, right? So let's say you're worried about thinness. I could just trim this outside down a little bit, right? To dive down a little bit more right here to match up. So let's just do that. So I'll just spend a little bit more time on the outside here. And I was noticing that there is a little, the bottom wasn't completely flat. It is shallower in the middle and it does turn up just ever so slightly. So I can do that. Now this foot is too chunky, right? You see how thick and wide this is? It's way too wide for what I want. I left it like that so I can make a choice. I could trim and make it more. If I felt it was too wide, I can trim this outside in. If I felt that it was just the right side, I could trim this side this way. Or if I felt like I needed a little bit of both, I could trim from both sides. I'm feeling like it's about the right size, so I'm just going to majorly trim from this side like this. Oh, let's do one of those bottoms that has a thing. I forgot. We're going to do that one more time. So here, right, I have a lot of height and a lot of things. So I can just use the heel of this right here and trim into this to create more. Remember we did this with a plate. So I'll show you once again. I'm just going to use the heel of this and trim directly in, and you'll see creating like a little scoop out there. I really like doing this for things like this because you got all this foot to play with. Why not do something with it? Oh, I could have done an undercut foot. That would have been fun, right? But it's lots of fun. And then it's not quite even. The break there isn't quite even. So I'm going to trim that smooth. Let's trim it smooth, right? So, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. So I'm spending the time to see if I can make that even. There we go. So we're almost even. You see how I made that invisible? So it just comes up and then makes a turn, right? But I made a little bit of a bump here. So let's trim that away. Now, I don't really like that. I like it when there's a little bit of a lip there. So I'm going to come back in here with this bit and just trim a little bit straight down here. I just like that a little bit better to acknowledge that there's something different going on there and the glaze will pool there a little bit. So did the inside, let's do the outside. I did the outside, let's do the inside here. Like that. And that's pretty much it for the foot. Now all I have to do is round this baby off by trimming the outside and inside there. So trim this baby down like that, right? You see that? And what will this do? This creates a really strong landing point, right? Because it's nice and round. So when this foot lands against the counter, even when it's full of food, right? Because a bigger bowl, let's say it's full of soup, or you put like 20 oranges or something in here, right? It's going to have some weight, right? It has to, and let's say you're kind of like, you just got on a thing and you find out your taxes, property taxes are going to double next year. You're talking on to the tax people and you're like, and then you're mad and you still have the orange. And then what are you going to do? You're going to like, boom, you're going to like slam that. You got to express yourself, right? If this isn't rounded, this will chip, right? If it has a right angle corner, that corner is going to hit first and really thinly and then chipped a chunk off. By rounding this off, when it lands, it's going to land on a rounded part, less chance of chipping, right? So round that side off, really super important, always, 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 because it's going to have some weight and some heftiness. And then just for symmetry, I'm going to round this side off too. You don't really ever see the inside corners, right? Because it doesn't land, it never lands flat, right? Ideally, right? If we were perfect people, when we set it down, we send it down super soft. Every point of the foot would land on the counter at the same time, but we're not. It's always going to hit one way or the other. By rounding it off like that, we create an opportunity later on for us to be less perfect, right? That makes sense. And then I could do two things with this. Let's see if I saw it, right? So if this is wet enough, because sometimes you will be trimming wet clay here, pretty wet, I might be able to just take this rib, and you know how like on the inside, I was able to use a metal rib. Sometimes I'm able to use a red rib here and fold it over and press it against here to really smooth that out. Because remember, this is going to be unglazed, right? And so we want to create an opportunity for us to be good, right? To look good, right? To impress our friends. So you see how smooth and tight that is. You see that we're just going to leave this part down here, right? You see, just coarse this time. I could take all that time to smooth out like I did the rib on the inside. This always has to be smooth because this will be unglazed. What is my plan? So pretend this is the kiln shelf. So pretend it's upside down, right? Resting on the kiln shelf. You'll see that that kiln shelf, you see that it has already enough vertical space. I will glaze it to where that smooth line ends, right? Glaze will stop there. And you see, because it is rounded over, when the kiln shelf is there, that gives me already enough vertical distance, right? To the viewer, that surface here is presenting to you as a viewer, or anybody else, that presents as a downward facing surface, right? It looks closer that I glaze it closer to the bottom than I actually did. That makes sense, everybody? If your bottom, let's say if you left your foot, the pot just like this thing is coming down, and you have a flat bottom, right, on it, completely right angle, you have to leave some of that verticalness bare, right, to create that same distance that I just created by rounding that off. So when you see that vertical side bare, you see that you are leaving vertical bare. Everyone sees it for the whole world. When I do this way and I round that off big enough, people don't see that as vertical. People see that as bottom, even though you see it. When it's flipped over, let's look at it when it's flipped over. Why? So I'm done with this one. I would sign it normally, but we're not going to do that now. Make sure this whole bottom is clean. No stuff stuck to the bottom because you worked so hard to make that beautiful. I'll put it on a bat, right? I don't want to just pick it up now, especially. I don't want to just pick it up in the air because I trimmed off a lot of the strength that was keeping it from warping, right? So before I could pick it up because I had but all this clay that was supporting it before is now gone. These bowls can warp now if I just try to, there's actually no good way for me to even pick this up, right? So bat on bat and then flip it over and then we'll look, let me shake off some of that crap, right? And then flip over. Usually I have a better place to do this. So now let's look at can you grab that one? There, perfect. Now let's look at the foot on the bottom. It's a little bit, let's see, I wish we had better light here, but you can see there, right? You see how that foot presents as bottom facing, right? Also, I'm trying to force light in there so you can see it, but normally you see what that does is it's like in shadow because it's turning under so aggressively. So even though I got it, for me, I have enough room vertically so I can glaze all the way to that line that I was talking about earlier. Since it's undercut, it just creates a dark shadow under there. You guys see that? It ends up being a darkish line. So people don't see it as you stopping vertically. People see you as just glazing to the bottom, right? So why is this important? I'm always thinking about all the steps, all the way to the end. I might even be thinking about the colors I want to be using, the glazes, if I want to use underglaze, if I want to decorate, because what is this? Oh my God, this provides an absolutely gorgeous surface for underglaze, for decoration, or just for the glaze to do its thing, right? That makes sense. If you are a decorator, this is awesome. Go for it. If you want to attach things like frogs, butterflies, snail, whatever, or sculpt, this is a beautiful surface, absolutely gorgeous surface to do that on, right? All those things count. If you're just a simple potter, John, I'm not into glazing, I'm not into decoration, I just love throwing and I just want to create these big things that people can use, that's also good. Just pick a good glaze that's just awesome across there, right? For me, that's what I'm most drawn to. One glaze, boom, beautiful all by itself, right? I'm not into like adding things or building little creatures or anything. That's opposite John, right? But I know that some of you are. This is awesome. Woohoo, right? It is so beautiful and it presents so well to people. That makes sense to everybody? So you can think of this as a way just to create a canvas for yourself. Any questions about that, right? So that's the whole thing. I make a big mess. How do you get good at big bowls? You got to make them. There's no sitting on the sidelines and dreaming about it and that you'll do it better. The reason why this is important is you're learning how to move more clay, expanding your comfort zone. And then when you go back to regular size bowls and cups, you will be genius level because this is so much harder, right? Going back to a 2-pound bowl or 3-pound bowl is like no problem. Centering instant, throwing instant. You'll have all the control in the world because you've gone way past that, right? You've really broken down some boundaries. That makes sense to everybody? And so even if you don't get any big, super big things, that's fine. Just get bigger. And then when you're small, when you're working on other stuff, you'll be that much better. Any questions? Okay, go make some bowls.